Hey, everybody, and welcome back to For the Booze.
For the Booze.
For the Booze.
We are back. It's been a minute. I will say it's been a minute.
A couple months.
We've had some life things happen.
We have.
If you want to know all about it, join the Patreon.
That's right.
Because that's where we talked about it.
That's right.
I don't want to get into it again. But we are back, and we are going to continue the story of this lovely man, Gerard John Schaefer.
I don't know about lovely.
Yeah, he sucks.
He does suck.
He's a terrible person.
Yes.
The killer cop of Port St. Lucie. I had to think about that.
In Florida.
It's been a little while. I even wrote this one a little while ago.
Yeah.
But we're back, and we are going to tell this story. It may be 2 more parts after this, I believe.
That's crazy.
We're not even really getting into the bulk of his crime yet.
No, which my lovely husband over here has dubbed that to me to read.
Because I think it's funny. It sounds funnier coming from you.
Why does it sound funnier? It's gross stuff either way.
I feel like somebody out there will get it.
I don't know.
It's pretty funny.
Whatever. I don't mind.
Yeah.
I love true crime.
I mean, so we're gonna jump into this. It's not going to get any better. It's just not. So again, I have to put out a warning. Don't listen to this with your kids or anything. This is not going to be a kid-friendly episode. And I'm also not going to edit stuff out anymore. I'm not doing it.
Okay.
You know, if YouTube doesn't like it, they'll let me know.
Oh, okay.
You know, because, look, we're all adults here.
We are.
You know, so it's up to you. If you listen to it around people who don't need to hear it, that's on you, not us. We've told you.
Yes. Earmuffs for the littles or send them away because they probably don't need to hear it.
Yeah, you probably don't want them to hear it at all. But let's jump into this. Glorious tale. Now, when we last left Schaefer, he was divorced, fired from his teaching job, and had his mind made up that all women needed to be dealt with. And that was just the beginning of the story. From here on is where the real terror of the killer cop begins.
Oh, God.
Terrible guy.
Okay.
Now, after a rocky marriage, Schaefer's parents divorced in September of 1969, just as he returned to Florida Atlantic University. 3 days after classes convened on September 8th, a mysterious fate overtook a former neighbor, the object of his teenage lust and rage.
Stop. Oh, my God.
Now, Lee Hainline had married Charles Bonadies, I don't know, on August 21st, 1969. Now, it was a rocky union from the start with frequent fights. One subject of contention was Lee's story that her childhood neighbor and sometime tennis partner had offered her a $20,000 salary to join the CIA. Now, Charles laughed at the idea and told her to forget it.
What? Don't work at the CIA? Okay.
Less than a month later, on September 8th, he came home to find a note from Lee saying that she had gone to Miami. She never came back, and her car was later found in a Fort Lauderdale parking lot. Lee's brother would go on to call Schaefer and heard a strange story.
Oh, God.
He said that Lee had called him to say that she was leaving Charles and asked him for a ride to the airport, where she meant to catch a flight to Cincinnati. Now, Schaefer says that he agreed, but Lee never called back with a departure time. I don't believe him. I do believe that he's never admitted to killing her.
Okay, but why would she call him and not her husband or her brother or someone a whole lot closer than a freaking neighbor?
I think it's pretty well agreed that he made her disappear.
Yeah.
But he's never admitted to it. I don't think he's admitted to a lot of crimes, honestly.
I think that's even worse.
It is.
If you're gonna do it, say you did it.
Sometimes that's the disconnect with them. It's like if they don't talk about it, they didn't do it. I don't know.
You definitely still did. 100%.
We think. There's no way to be sure, like 100%, unless he tells you, but I think he did it. And Charles filed for divorce on October 6th. His petition was granted on March 10th, 1970. Nothing more was ever heard of Lee until her jewelry mysteriously surfaced at Dora Schaefer's home in April of 1973. Her fate still remains unknown.
How did her jewelry show up?
Well, that's the thing. So, he's a serial killer, and they keep trophies.
Absolutely. That's exactly where my mind went.
That is a
trophies.
That is a trophy.
Yep. Either locks of hair, clothes.
Why do you have to go with hair? That's gross.
Well, we've seen it before, have we not?
Like a Ruth Battaglia shrine.
Like,
hey, Arnold.
Or underwear, like specifically for clothing.
A lot of times it'll be like IDs, jewelry.
Yep.
Underwear. It's always a big thing.
Undergarments.
Yeah. I just go upstairs for yours.
Brother, what's that? What's that, brother?
Schaefer's second try at student teaching didn't go any better than the first. Now, FAU administrators placed him at Stranahan High School, but supervisor Richard Goodhart removed him on November 11th, 1969, after a series of classroom misconducts. Now, Goodhart recalled, quote, "I told him when he left that he'd better never let me hear of his trying to get a job with any authority over the people, or I'd do anything I could to see that he didn't get it." End quote.
That's pretty serious.
Well, if you remember,
absolutely not. He should never work.
If you remember from the last one, he had the same issue.
Yeah.
Because he couldn't stop, pushing his views and
his ideas onto the students,
it
right? It was a college?
Yeah, it was mostly politics.
Right.
And he couldn't stop himself from pushing his ideas onto kids, and the school didn't want that. They wanted him to be a teacher. It's weird.
Oh, you have a teaching job. They want you to teach and not preach about your ideals on things. I mean, what a concept.
The next to disappear from Broward County was Carmen Marie Halleck, a 22-year-old cocktail waitress. She had lunch with her sister-in-law on December 18th, 1969, discussing a date she had planned for that evening. Halleck said she was meeting a teacher who had offered her a job involving, quote, some kind of undercover work for the government. Now, this position featured international travel and lots of money.
Oh, you don't say. A same type of job was offered to this woman.
I do say. That's kind of his MO, is that, I don't know, he was like, you want to work for the CIA? He's a weird guy, man.
I wonder, though,
saying the CIA back then was different than today, though. This was like today you'd be like, narc. Back then, you were still a narc, but it was like a prestigious thing.
Right.
Yeah, it is still prestigious, don't get me wrong. But it's just how the public viewed it then versus now.
Right. But my thinking is, like, these two women get this almost same job offer, quote unquote, making
we all
lots
know
of money for the CIA.
We all know it's him.
Like, is he making these phone calls, like, as someone from the CIA offering these random people a job?
I don't think so. But I do think he's claiming to work for the CIA and offering jobs to women to get them alone and travel with him. He's a bad guy. Now, Halleck missed work the next night, and when she had not been seen by Christmas Day, her relatives used a spare key to check her apartment. They found the bathtub full and her dog unfed. Halleck's car was found in a nearby parking lot a few days later. When Schaefer's stash of souvenirs was seized in 1973, police recovered 2 of Halleck's gold-filled teeth and a shamrock pin identified by her family, and her body has never been found to this day.
Trophies.
Just like Lee Hainline.
Trophies.
Found
in a parking lot.
These are 2 women that don't know each other.
Right.
But both of their things were collected as souvenirs and found at his mother's house. So
disgusting.
I'll let you determine how you feel about it. But I know for me, and probably for you, he probably killed these ladies.
100%.
I could only imagine. And when we get into the things that he does to these women, it's mortifying. He does awful, awful, awful things.
I don't know what he has done to these women yet, but
it's not good. It's like every woman's nightmare.
Sit in that apartment and starve.
Bad.
Such a bad dude.
Bad dog.
Get out of here.
Yep. Now, in March 1970, Schaefer petitioned FAU administrators to alter his records, changing the November withdrawal to a, quote, incomplete, and allowing him to resume study. They agreed, and Schaefer returned as a full-time student, along with his wife. Now, the marriage was doomed, though. Martha filed for divorce on May 2nd, citing Schaefer's extreme cruelty.
I can only imagine.
And so this is what, his second marriage already?
Yeah.
He's not even out of college yet.
Poor Martha.
Martha? Poor Martha. He rebounded with a month's vacation in Europe and North Africa, including trips into the Sahara Desert. Schaefer would later boast of victims, quote, on 3 continents. And while given his record, the claim might be plausible, however, no slayings outside the U.S. have ever been confirmed. By October 1970, to make tuition money, Schaefer was working as a security guard at Florida Light and Power.
FLP.
We used to pay them.
Yeah, it's actually FPL now.
Yes. There, he met secretary Teresa Dean, and they became engaged. This dude is constantly engaged. Tying the knot soon after Schaefer's August 1971 graduation from FAU with a bachelor's degree in geography. It was useless without a teaching credential, but Schaefer had chosen a new career path. Having failed to, quote, do right as a priest or teacher, because remember, he was also a priest.
Yeah, I remember.
He set his sights on law enforcement. This is honestly probably where a lot of dislike for law enforcement stems from and stuff like this. Don't get me wrong. I know that there are a lot of bad cops, but there are also a lot of really good cops.
Yes.
You know, don't stone me in the comments or anything, but I am a supporter of the police. We need them. You know, they restore law and order. And while every walk of life will have good people and bad people, I'm sure some of this is where dislike of law enforcement comes in.
And I think nowadays, like in now times compared to in the 70s, there was a lot more corruption back then.
Oh, way more.
Whereas now it's few and far between.
There's still a lot of corruption. It's just done differently.
Right.
But the invention of the internet has put more things out on Front Street. You're able to reach a lot more people and tell them what's going on. So back then you communicated through long distance phone calls and handwritten letters. That's just how we did things, faxing. But now you can reach pretty much anybody in the world like that.
Yeah.
So it's harder to get away with things like that. But I don't know. There's still as much corruption. It's just different. Mm-hmm. Hired by the Wilton Manors Police Department on September 3rd, 1971, Schaefer was sent back to Broward Community College, this time to the school's police academy, though. Now, he failed to disclose the fact that he had twice been fired from student teaching positions within the previous year, instead falsely claiming to have acquired 2 years' experience as a research assistant at FAU and to have recently returned to the U.S. from Morocco. Schaefer's previous work history was never verified.
Always verify.
Again, though, different time.
Always.
And even if they did verify, it's not like nowadays where you can just... nowadays, you can almost you hire people.
Yeah,
you can get almost an instant hit on somebody.
Absolutely.
Right? You can send something out, and within 10 minutes, they could be like, that's a bad person.
I've only been in management for under 2 years at this point. It's been about a year and a half, almost 2 years.
Hottest manager ever.
But I just recently started doing interviews and things, within the last year and a half or so. And it did not take long for me to do maybe 10 interviews. And then I could start to see those things where I'm like, yeah, no, I'm going to pass.
Yeah, they're the
personality
traits.
Yeah, it's either personality or just fits. Are they going to, kind of fit? Do they have what it takes kind of thing? Mm-hmm. I don't know, but it did not take long for me to be like, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no.
Well, yeah, because and especially when you work with people side by side all the time, you pick up on those personality traits that may or may not meld with the other people that you've worked with for years. So you'll just kind of know.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I mean, you're doing a good job.
Always verify.
You're doing a good job.
Thanks, babe.
Now, he graduated on December 17th, 1971, and hit the streets to begin his 6-month probationary term. Schaefer was just 25 years old at this point. He was on the job barely 3 weeks before another local woman disappeared. Belinda Hutchins was another 22-year-old cocktail waitress married to a drug addict who later told police that she, quote, had her own lifestyle and, quote, did what she wanted to do. Live it, girl.
She's 22.
Man.
Let her live her life.
Yeah, do your thing.
Jeez.
Arrested for prostitution in November 1970, she had paid a $250 fine in Fort Lauderdale. Now, there were no more arrests, but Hutchins was known to have flaunted her extramarital affairs. So she cheated a lot.
And then talked about it.
Yeah, she didn't.
Okay.
She didn't care who knew, but...
Well, I don't know if I'm on board with all that, girl, but...
Look, people live different lives. Not
Agreed.
If her... Oh, man, sorry. I know kids don't like that. If her boyfriend or whoever knew about it and he was fine with it, then it is what it is.
Right.
You live the life you're going to live. I don't know what else to say.
I wonder if the extramarital affairs tied into the prostitution, maybe? I don't but that tends to be more of a job and not...
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think it's two separate things. I think she did sex work on the side but had boyfriends other than her boyfriend.
Okay.
So I don't think they're referring to the same thing.
Okay.
Now, on January 5th, 1972, her husband and 2-year-old daughter watched her climb into a blue Datsun sedan, a strange man at the wheel, and vanish from their lives forever. In 1973, the search of Doris Schaefer's home revealed an address book containing the name, address, and phone number of Belinda's husband. Days later, he identified Schaefer's blue Datsun as the car that took Belinda on her last ride. No other trace of her was found, and no charges were ever filed.
So they identified the car, but then we're like, meh.
But think about all the evidence you have to have nowadays. You still had to have that back then, but it was harder to get.
Yeah.
I mean, you probably didn't have to have as much as today, but just somebody saying, that's the car, that's the guy, it's not enough. It wouldn't be enough today.
I know.
You
Unfortunately.
Cops aren't going to convict somebody with hopes. It has to be set.
I totally get it, but
I mean, it sucks. It does.
Come on.
And he's basically caught red-handed, but sometimes it's just out of reach. It happens. In Wilton Manor, Schaefer's proved himself as poorly suited for police work as he had been for the classroom. Surprising.
Yeah.
And Chief Bernard Scott told reporters, quote, he used poor judgment, did dumb things. I didn't want him around. Now, colleagues called Schaefer badge happy, obsessed with writing traffic tickets. Sounds like a Florida policeman, if I'm being honest.
Agreed.
Ex-FBI agent Robert Ressler claims that Schaefer stopped young women and asked them out on dates. Years later, detectives asserted that one of those women, never publicly identified, vanished forever soon after Patrolman Schaefer stopped her car. Now, Chief Scott was ready to fire Schaefer on March 16, 1972, when Schaefer surprised him by winning a commendation for a drug arrest. It saved his job, but only briefly. The, quote, dumb mistakes continued, and Scott called him in for their last talk on April 19th. I think he set up that drug arrest.
Yeah, probably.
To get that commendation. That's my theory. Now, Schaefer begged for another chance, quote, almost with tears in his eyes, and as Scott relented. The next day, Scott learned that Schaefer had applied for a job with the Broward County Sheriff's Department, and he fired Schaefer on the spot. There would be no Broward County badge for Schaefer, but we don't call him the killer cop for nothing. Now, he failed the department's mandatory psychological exam and was rejected. Now, I want to stop here what I'm reading and just remind you, this is the man who murdered, mutilated, and fornicated with dead cows. Do you remember that?
I do.
Okay, this is
do,
this guy. I am not surprised that he failed the psychological exam.
Yeah.
That just doesn't shock me.
It would shock me if he did.
I just had to point that out because that's all I can now. That is all I can associate with this man.
Yeah.
It's. I have some statements I could make, but they're not very appropriate. So, the applications to other local departments had Chief Scott's telephone ringing off the hook in Wilton Manors. He later recalled, quote, I told them I would put on a uniform and walk the streets myself before I would have him back. Fair.
Good man.
On June 30th, 1972, Schaefer was hired by Sheriff Richard Crowder in Martin County. Now, he came with a glowing letter of recommendation from Chief Bernard Scott of the Wilton Manors PD, but just a month later, Crowder checked the letter out and discovered it was a forgery.
Yeah, I would think
because there is no way.
He'd be like, yeah, he's a great guy, but I want him to work absolutely nowhere. No.
There's just no way.
No.
Oh, man. Nobody knows for sure why, but it was at this time that Schaefer got bored of killing victims singly. He later wrote that, quote, doing doubles is far more difficult than doing singles, but on the other hand, it also puts one in a position to have twice as much fun.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Nope.
I don't even know. Because I know the things that he did, and it's just creepy to hear that he put it that way.
And like, if you're into true crime, you know that most serial killers or most just murderers in general tend to shy away
From talking about it.
From two people.
Oh, from double victims? Yeah.
Yeah. From a crime with two victims. Like, it's messy. It's a lot. It's like, you can only imagine, like, you're trying to struggle with one. Like, what's...
Well, that's, that's where the deviltry comes in.
Oh, Jesus.
That's where we get the story of that from. And we'll find out when you read that next week.
Yay.
Now, there can be some lively discussions about which of the victims will get to be killed first. When you have a pair of... I'm going to read this. This is obviously not my feelings of any of this.
Okay.
So I'm just going to let you know. I'm going to read this, but this isn't me. When you have a pair of teenage bimbos bound hand and foot and ready for a session with the skinning knife, neither one of the little devils wants to be the one to go first. And they don't mind telling you quickly why their best friend should be the one to die.
Oh, God.
So he wasn't just taking two girls. He was taking best friends.
Like sisters. Like people super connected in life.
I can't remember if there were any sisters, but I know he would take best friends and he would play a little game where he would make them plead for him to kill the other one and let them go. And then he did other things to them. Yeah. That we'll get into at some point. Not yet. He's gross. He's really gross. He is a really gross guy. We cannot for sure know when Schaefer started doing doubles, as he called it. 7 years after the fact, his name was linked to the disappearance of 21-year-old Nancy Lechner and 20-year-old Pamela Nader, Pinellas County residents who vanished on a 1966 picnic trip in the Ocala National Forest.
Hey, we know where that is.
I grew up going there. I grew up going to the Ocala National Forest because anybody wants to know, I grew up in Ocala, Florida.
I lived there for 5 years, and that is where we met.
Yeah, and
wow,
he did some stuff. Now, the case remains unsolved, of course, and both women are still missing. A better case exists for Schaefer's involvement in the murders of 9-year-old Peggy Rand and 8-year-old Wendy Stevenson in Pompano Beach. Both vanished from their beach home on December 29th, 1970. Literal just children.
9 and 8.
Children. Little children.
Oh my God.
A day later, a clerk at a nearby convenience store reported a man buying ice cream for 2 young girls on the previous afternoon. The clerk identified photos of Peggy and Wendy, describing their companion as a white man in his 20s, 6 feet tall, around 200 pounds. Dead ringer for Gerard John Schaefer. Now, the girls remain missing, and Schaefer was never charged, though prosecutors publicly accused him of the crime in 1973. Schaefer denied the slayings publicly, but later confessed in a letter dated April 19th, 1989.
Wow.
But this is all right. So this is another aside note for him, is that it's been proven that like he's faked a lot of information, and he's left out stuff. He's lied about things, so he's like added things in, but left out the truth. And so with him, he's a real charming dude. Like he's a good talker.
Right.
He's like a Ted Bundy, you know, which if we remember, Ted Bundy drew inspiration from him.
Right.
You know, so like it's hard to know what he did and didn't do. It's hard. He's just one of those people. And a lot of serial killers are those kind of people. They're charming. That's how they get away with this stuff.
Yeah. That's how they lure people in.
Yep. And
That's how
it
they
works.
get them to trust them, to go with them, to, you know, befriend them, I guess.
It's when you have that kind of charm about you, people tend to trust you, which is how these serial killers back in the day got away with this stuff because, you know, they have that gift of gab and they don't come across as evil or, you know, they don't seem threatening, but they are. And that's, you know,
that's the terrifying part.
When I was a kid, I specifically don't really remember people talking to me about the dangers of strangers. Stuff we talk about now.
Stranger danger.
It's because of stuff like this.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, they never knew that these people were bad people until they got caught. Everybody would say that they're good people. Now, Schaefer here, he didn't have the best record, don't get me wrong, but people still liked him.
Yeah.
You know, until he creeped them out. Now, he wrote, quote, "I'm annoyed by all this murder talk. Peggy and Wendy just happened along at a time when I was curious about 1930s cannibal Albert Fish's craving for the flesh of young girls. I assure you, these girls were not molested. I found both of them very satisfactory, particularly with sauteed onions and peppers."
Oh my God.
So he's claiming to have eaten them.
Oh my God.
And I mean, we all know who Albert Fish is. He's like the OG cannibal.
Yeah. If you don't know who Albert Fish is, do not look him up. It is so gross.
If you don't know who he is, you should look him up.
It's so gross.
He's disgusting. He's
so bad.
He's besides Dahmer, he is probably the most famous cannibal case. And he did. I'll never cover him. I mean, there's every true crime podcast in the world has covered him. You can go listen to anybody. I would suggest Last Podcast on the Left. They did a great episode on it. Very demented dude from the 30s, and people trusted him. Here
we go.
Was charming. He came across people called him a friendly old grandfatherly figure and would let their kids go off with him.
And those were his victims for the most part.
And those were his victims.
Yeah.
Now, Schaefer was free on bond awaiting trial for the Trotter Wells abduction in Martin County when his next known victims were murdered on September 27, 1972. The double slaying of Susan Place and Georgia Jessup would land him in prison for life and would be the only murders for which he was ever actually tried.
What?
The only ones.
2?
Yeah.
That's it?
Yes, and if you go back to our first episode, I believe at some point I put up the picture of those girls. Those are the only 2 girls, the only 2 people that he was tried and convicted for.
That is terrifying.
So that's what I can't remember if he's dead or not now. I don't remember. But those are the only ones that he got caught up on, which is crazy to me because he has himself admitted. He admitted to doing other crimes.
Right.
But again, it's that burden of you have to have evidence. It's just how the legal system works. And these people, they're not stupid. They know how to get away with stuff. And not only that, but he was law enforcement. So he really did have an in with being able to make evidence disappear. And, you know, they're not stupid people, unfortunately.
Terrifying.
If they were, they would never get anywhere.
God.
Less than 4 weeks after Place and Jessup vanished on October 23rd, 14-year-olds Mary Alice Briscolina and Elise Lena Farmer were added to the missing persons list. Farmer's family reported her missing on October 24th, while Briscolina's waited another week, assuming she had run away from home. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Now, Farmer's skeletal remains were found on January 17th, 1973, just 8 days after Schaefer went to jail at a construction site near Plantation High School. My brother used to live in Plantation, right near the high school. Now, Briscolina was found a month later on February 15th, just 200 yards away. Both girls were identified by their dental records.
Oh my God. So was wasn't found for a while, but was only 200 yards away.
Yeah.
Wow.
We just didn't have the technology back then that we have now.
It's 2 football fields, which is, if you think
It's
about
not
it,
that far.
it's really not that far, but it is kind of far.
I guess.
If it's in like wilderness.
I mean, yes, they would have to walk a little bit, I suppose. Now, following the April search of Dora Schaefer's home, farmers' relatives were able to identify a piece of jewelry taken from the murdered girl. Schaefer was never charged with those murders, but he later admitted to the crimes in a letter referring to one of his published stories titled, quote, Murder Demons. On April 9th, 1991, he wrote, "What crimes am I supposed to confess? Farmer? Briskelina? What do you think Murder Demons is? Fiction? You want confessions, but you don't recognize them when I anoint you with them."
Ew.
He loves himself.
Ew.
He loves himself.
I do not like that.
He loves himself. You can tell
That's gross.
by the way he writes things that, like, he's very amused with him. Like, he really likes himself.
Ew.
And
that was really...
I find that gross. Now, Schaefer was sentenced for the Trotter Wells assault in December 1972, but he did not actually enter jail until January 15th of 1973. 1 week earlier, 19-year-old Iowa residents Colette Goodenough, man, that's a crazy last name.
Good enough.
Good enough. And Barbara Ann Wilcox left Biloxi, Mississippi, hitchhiking to Florida. Now, no trace of either girl was seen until April, when searchers found evidence of their fate in Schaefer's stash, of course. Among the items retrieved were Barbara's driver's license, along with Colette's passport, diary, and a book of poems. Now, skeletal remains of both victims were found in Port St. Lucie in January 1977, but no cause of death could be found, and no charges were ever filed. How he constantly gets away with stuff.
I don't understand that, but I also don't understand, like, where it said it was December when he was charged, but didn't go to jail until January. So if they would have just put him in jail, these 2 women would be alive.
Yes. But, dude, this is what I'm saying. Like, you want to be like, these people are stupid, but they're not. They're so intelligent that, like...
It's scary.
Yeah, because
it's so scary.
They literally can get away with murder. Literally. They do it. He did it. I don't know, 8 times now. We all know he did it. But again, we need the evidence. But don't ever think that these people are, dumb. They're not dumb.
Right.
They are very smart, which is how they get away with it, unfortunately. Now, Teresa Schaefer made her one and only prison visit on November 17th, 1973, to serve Gerard with divorce papers.
Yeah, girl.
Now, outside the walls, reporters trumpeted that lawyer Elton Schwartz, age 45, was dating Schaefer's 21-year-old wife. I don't care.
No.
He also handled Teresa's divorce, and they would be married on November 30th, with Schwartz announcing that his client had suggested the arrangement. So Schaefer.
Oh,
freaking
okay.
Weird.
Okay.
Whatever, man.
What?
Now, better for her.
Yeah, for sure, but, like, that's weird.
It is weird. Now, inmate Schaefer, unfazed by it all, maintained correspondence with Schwartz for several years afterwards, waiting nearly a decade to charge the attorney with illegal malpractice. Meanwhile, Schaefer was busy exposing another conspiracy, claiming that he had been framed by drug-dealing lawmen and Martin County prosecutors. This dude is delusional.
Yeah, okay.
In Schaefer's new story, he was framed for killing, quote, 2 narcotics informants because he refused to play ball with powerful drug lords. Ironically, one of Robert Stone's aides was convicted of drug trafficking in the 1980s, but no evidence linked the case to Schaefer's crimes, of course, because he's making it up.
Yeah.
Schaefer would ultimately file 19 separate appeals, but each one of them was dismissed.
Yeah, I bet.
In 1987, a judge went on to say, quote, "There has to be an end, a conclusion to litigation and to the abuse of the judicial process. The defendant should realize, once and for all, the die is cast, the mold is made, the loaf is baked. Therefore, the judgment is final and forever."
Hey, I like him.
That's a real FU from the judge, and I like it. I like
love
it.
That.
Now, these were strong words strengthened by a state parole board ruling that Schaefer was ineligible for release before February 2017. But still, the hopeless lawsuits continued at the public's expense. But Schaefer would find other ways to amuse himself.
Uh-oh.
In 1979, he declared himself, quote, married to a Filipina, quote, picture bride. Now, the young woman appeared in July 1980 and moved in with Schaefer's father. A marriage license materialized, sans ceremony, and was accepted by authorities at Avon Park's minimum security prison. Several, quote, contact visits were permitted, you know what that means, before Schaefer's wife got her green card in 1985 and dropped him like a proverbial hot potato.
Good job, girl.
Because she was like, yo, he's gross.
Yeah.
And I know what he did. A few weeks later, in September 1985, Schaefer was accused of plotting an escape from Avon Park and murder a hit list of victims, including his ex-wife, Elton Schwartz, Robert Stone, and Judge Tobridge. Now, state police confirmed the plot, and Schaefer was sent off to the maximum security at Stark, home of Florida's death row.
Bye. See ya. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
Now, despite being closely watched, Schaefer still managed to run a mail fraud operation from his prison cell, collaborating with cohorts outside to post ads in sex magazines, soliciting money from various kinky tricks. To that end, Schaefer adopted various pseudonyms, always female.
So gross. Which, that leads back to when he was a kid and he always wanted to be a girl.
Yeah.
Because of the way his dad treated his sister and not him.
Absolutely.
Wow.
It's always a full circle with these guys.
So gross.
It's always a full circle. Now, he became Mistress Felice, a dominatrix, a prostitute Jessica Zuriaga, stern matron Miller, a husband killer on death row, and so on. Now, some of his slaves paid cash for the privilege of washing Mistress Felice's soiled panties, delivered by mail for a price. Schaefer also enjoyed writing to inmates at other prisons, posing as the great love of their lives, all while laughing behind their backs.
Oh my God, he is deranged.
Now, you will get offed for that kind of stuff.
Oh, what?
It's not a good idea.
Oh my God.
Now, one such inmate awaiting trial for murder told Schaefer where his victim's body could be found, and Schaefer relayed the directions to police, landing his client on death row. It was a deadly game, perhaps an extension of his childhood death wish, and he played it recklessly, as if he was untouchable. In 1986, collaborating with police from North Miami, Schaefer created the identity of D.D. Kelly, a 14-year-old prostitute who offered nude photos to pedophiles.
14.
But hold on. Responses to his ads were collected by U.S. postal inspectors, but none of Schaefer's correspondents were prosecuted. He basically tried to Chris Hansen people. But not maybe that's a bad comparison. Chris Hansen doesn't send nudes.
No.
But he's trying to help. The police are getting him to help them nab.
You shut your mouth.
I guess some words I am going to have to edit out for the video, but.
Pick someone else.
Yeah.
Please.
Well,
9 and an 8-year-old, I remind you.
It's 1986. I'm surprised they even care at this point.
Right.
So, I mean, good on them, I guess.
Well, I don't.
Now, instead, authorities discovered he was working with another inmate, Mervyn Cross, to run a child pornography network from prison. Cross paid Schaefer's father a monthly stipend for use of his telephone line to communicate with Filipino colleagues. Prosecutors convicted Cross, adding time to his sentence at Stark, but no charges were ever filed against the Schaefers. These people are untouchable.
This is ridiculous.
Even as the DD sting collapsed, Schaefer would have his first run-in with condemned killer Ted Bundy. Now, according to Schaefer, quote, Bundy was always 100% respectful of me. I treated him as a supplicant, while others were hanging on his every word. Now, Bundy allegedly confessed that he had been inspired by Schaefer's case to kill 2 victims on a single day in 1974.
Oh my God.
So he's even responsible for that. Bad guy. With Bundy, Schaefer debated such fine points of murder as, quote, the maggot problem and techniques of cleaning upholstery after dying victims urinated in their cars. Another, sometimes confidant of Schaefer was self-described cannibal Otis Toole. Do you know who that is?
I feel like I do.
Bad guy. He's a bad guy. Sentenced to life for 6 murders. Now, Toole was suspected of many more, most notably the 1981 kidnapping of young Adam Walsh.
Yes. Okay. I do know who he is.
Yeah. I guess kidnap and slaying. But
Yeah.
By 1988, when he met Schaefer, Toole had several times confessed to Walsh's murder, always recanting his statement when detectives asked for proof. Schaefer wrote to Adam's father, John Walsh, host of America's Most Wanted for you younger folks. It was a TV show that was on when we were kids. Posing as Toole and demanding $50,000 for Adam's remains, quote, so you can get them buried all decent and Christian.
Ew.
Dude,
that is disrespectful.
He's been talked about a lot, but we may talk about him in the future. Because he's another really, it's disgusting. Now, Walsh ignored the offer, and Toole soon soured on Schaefer's mercenary attentions. Aside from the sadistic pleasure of tormenting Adam's parents, Schaefer gained nothing from the episode except a new addendum to his reputation as a snitch. He's a snitch. Schaefer lost an admirer on January 24th, 1989, when Ted Bundy kept his long-delayed date with Florida's electric chair. Around the same time, ex-girlfriend Sandy Stewart, now divorced mother Sandra London, picked up a copy of Anne Rule's The Stranger Beside Me, detailing Rule's relationship or friendship with Bundy, and decided to write a book on her relationship with Schaefer. London wrote to Schaefer on February 8th, 1989, asking, quote, remember me? She pitched the notion of a book about your experiences, quote, and requested samples of his writing. Now, this lady is a very problematic character. I'm not going to get into why, but if you want, it's worth looking up. She's just very, she's problematic. We'll just say that.
I feel like she's trying to poke a bear.
It goes deeper than that. Like, really, you should, when we get done, you should look her up. She's very problematic, and she's just not good. Now, Schaefer responded enthusiastically, touting his case as, quote, virgin territory, adding, quote, naturally, I'm favorably disposed towards someone who has known me intimately. He recalled London as, quote, a former great love of my life and denied any hostility over their breakup. Now, at their first prison meeting, London found Schaefer transformed into a, quote, a neebish, portly, pale, balding, and half-blind. He reminded her of a middle-aged, desk-bound clerk gone to seed. Again, look her up.
What?
There's a lot behind this lady and her connection to him and Ted Bundy. She's just not a good person. In my opinion. I know that there some people, whatever, I'm not going to get into it. Now, there was nothing soft about Schaefer's stories, though. They sported macabre titles such as, quote, blonde on a stick and, quote, flies in her eyes. Between March and May 1989, Schaefer sent London 7 grisly tales. She added drawings and fragments of writing seized from Doris Schaefer's home in 1973, releasing the lot as a volume of killer fiction in June 1969. Now, a second book would soon follow, along with independent stories, poems, sketches, and a, quote, killer serial that aimed to, quote, satirize Schaefer's own case. The leading character, a rogue cop who slaughters prostitutes in his spare time.
Oh,
this is what I'm saying.
God.
He loves himself. He absolutely loves himself, and he thinks I think in his mind, he's created this world where he's doing something good somehow. I don't know. It's
What?
really, he's a very interesting case because like his mind it's very interesting.
Why did she have to add drawings?
Well, I mean, everybody who writes serial killer stuff usually gets some of their stuff and puts it in there. I mean, John Wayne Gacy was very well known for that, like his self-portraits and stuff.
That's true.
However, a guard examined Schaefer's work and deemed it, quote, pornographic filth, confiscating the latest manuscript as contraband, unsuitable for a prisoner. Now, the work was released after Florida's Attorney General admitted the stories played a role in Schaefer's latest legal appeal, but Schaefer himself was forbidden from keeping a copy in prison. Now, critics in the press and prosecutor's office branded Killer Fiction a, quote, blueprint for murder, masking details of Schaefer's own crimes in the guise of entertainment. Schaefer worked hard to impress his ex-lover. On one hand, he claimed to be innocent, framed by drug-dealing cops and attorneys who feared his integrity, casting himself in a martyr's role. He said, quote, I let Satan get control of me. I hated evil. I wanted to destroy evil. I went and immersed myself in the battle, but destroyed myself in the process. God saved me by allowing me to be framed by corrupt people, unquote. He really thinks he's a hero.
I can't even begin to tell you how much of a disgusting human that makes you.
Well, I mean, obviously.
Oh,
that's why we're talking about him.
And of course, like, it's everybody else's fault.
He truly,
get out of here, dude.
I don't know if this is a persona that he's come up with or if he truly feels this way.
Right.
I'm not sure. But if you read a lot of the things that he writes like that, you would think that he might actually believe this, but I don't know him. I don't know enough about him, but when I read the things that he writes, I truly do believe that he believes these things, but I'm
either
not
way,
sure.
I hate it.
I mean, he's a very hateable person. Come on.
No.
Now, a week later, he wrote, quote, my battle has been to overcome the problem. I believe I have accomplished this through Jesus Christ. He also added, quote, my own personal belief in Jesus assures me of my future as a child of God, but that does not excuse me from helping my fellow man, unquote. And this spurs my issue with religion right here. How can you do things like this and then just be forgiven and you go to heaven and everything's all good? Because by, religious standards, he could just be like, I'm sorry for everything that I did and wash it away and boom, boom, you go to heaven. I can't live in that world. I'm sorry. It doesn't make sense to me.
No comment.
Now, on March 21st, 1989, he wrote, quote, I am, factually, a captain of the Dixie Mafia. I have, factually, the power to have you killed. I have, in the past, used these powers. 3 days later, he also added, quote, I am a syndicate man. When I put on my sub-chief's hat, I am Don El Tigre, and I can scare the living shit out of you, unquote. I don't know, dude. He's wild.
Okay.
He's wild.
What? Whatever, Schaefer.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know how to feel about this. I feel like he's got a bit of L. Ron Hubbard in him. Because L. Ron Hubbard wrote science fiction, and it seems like, this isn't science fiction, but he's writing like this dramatized world where he is this mafia member or like rogue cop, defender hero. But I don't know if it's just all BS or if he believes it.
I think it's a little bit of both, I would think.
I think he believes it when it's beneficial for him.
Agreed. But I think like when it's more of the far-fetched fiction is maybe when he would add more real life things.
I guess. I have no idea.
Because this dude is super twisted.
Well, I think he adds more real life things when he starts to become less relevant. When he starts to fade, where his name isn't as scary to people anymore. And he's like, oh, let me remind you of some other things that I might have done. So I don't know.
Gross.
Now, Schaefer would never stop with claims of mob connections. Schaefer also insisted on January 20th, 1991, quote, I am the top serial killer, and I can prove it. He was an expert hangman, Schaefer wrote, dispatching victims, quote, so quickly that they wouldn't even pee on the rope, unquote. He's also a hangman, just so you know. He does terrible things.
Oh, my God.
Now, furthermore, he added, quote, I never at any time required more than 2 strokes to behead a woman. Never. I was absolutely skilled at it. Now, Schaefer was vague on numbers, but once estimated his body count somewhere between 80 and 110 victims.
Oh, my God.
I believe it. I do believe it. Again, I'm going to...
He was like still young when he got caught, right?
Yeah, he's pretty young through all this, yeah.
That is so disturbing.
I'm going to read this next part again. These are not my feelings. These are his quotes, because I would never say this. Quote, one whore drowned in her own vomit while watching me disembowel her girlfriend. He smirked at this. Quote, I'm not sure that counts as a valid kill. Did the pregnant ones count as 2 kills? It can get confusing. Always, though, he balked at the notion of sex as a motive. Quote, I did not have sex problems, Schaefer wrote on March 22nd, 1989.
You are delusional.
Because once we get into his crimes, it does seem these were motivated in that way. Quote, a problem means you are unhappy or discontented. And again, on April 9th, 1991, quote, a sex killer I was not. I am unique. I guarantee it. Killer fiction and its sequels flopped commercially, leaving London short of cash in early 1991. And on January 18th, Schaefer proposed marriage, noting that his wife could not be forced to testify, quote, even if I were to show you a basket of severed heads. Okay. Now, the next day, he reconsidered, blaming London for his crimes. He wrote, quote, I will tell you here and now that plenty of your women died because you couldn't help me solve my various crises in 1965. I tried to tell you about it, but you couldn't deal with it. You bolted, abandoned me. That's when it started, unquote.
Because someone else can't handle your crazy shit?
He's trying to shift the blame. He's trying to make it about somebody else.
Like, take it off your
But how many times does he need to admit to things and nothing happens? At this point, I mean, if he says he did it, he probably did it. So just
slap it all on. Just
exactly.
pile it up.
The prison officials began intercepting these letters between Schaefer and London in March 1991. On May 16th, guards opened a letter and discovered outlines for new stories. They filed a disciplinary report, and Schaefer spent 30 days in solitary for, quote, conspiracy to conduct a business from his cell. You can't do that. With book sales stagnant, London sought new avenues of income. Producers for the television show A Current Affair offered her $1,000 for a segment on Schaefer. Reluctantly, Schaefer agreed to an interview with reporter Steve Dunleavy. In place of his, quote, frame-up defense, though viewers heard London proclaim, quote, he was normal, except he had a compulsion to kill, unquote. He's not normal.
I don't know about that.
He's not normal.
No.
Now, Robert Stone branded Schaefer, quote, one of America's worst serial killers ever. Dunleavy called Schaefer a, quote, monster and a diseased specimen.
Oh, I like that.
Closing the segment with a prayer that Schaefer, quote, find his hell on earth. Now, Schaefer would write to London, quote, we're through, after viewing the program. Quote, you've taped a black hole of genuine rage and it's focused on you. Just never speak my name to anyone, anywhere, ever again. I've met a number of people from the Satanist underground. To express my appreciation for what you've said, I've explained to them about your daughter. They'll probably get in touch with her personally. If you want to make an issue of this, then the kid is gonna be the one to pay the tab. Am I clear? And that's where we're gonna end part 2 of Gerard John Schaefer. He is a bad man. He's a bad man.
He is so full of himself.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know if ties to the mafia or
none of that's true.
Like, I don't think it is at all. But
we're just going to throw that out there. None of that's true. None of that has ever come to light to have any credence to it at all.
But
None
like,
of it.
he throws it out there like it's this power.
Because to him it is. He thinks
it's disgusting.
He's a story writer. This is why I compared him to L. Ron Hubbard, because that was his whole life was writing stories that he eventually believed himself.
Right.
And I think he's like that. He just has a penchant to kill people, especially young girls.
Oh, God.
So that's why, we've made it through pretty much his story. We'll probably finish off this and then get into what he did next week. If you're next week's not going to be good. I'm just going to warn you. It's not going to be good. It's going to be bad because he did some terrible things. And then, of course, we will end this with the tie into the paranormal claims of the Devil's Tree down in Florida.
Which is part of the reason we picked this one.
It's the reason why we picked this one as our first one. You know, because there will be times where we're just going to do true crime. It doesn't have to have a paranormal, you know, anything paranormal in it. But that is why we picked this one.
Yeah, we're definitely not going to do big name cases like they've been done.
I don't want to always do those. Yeah.
Literally, they're everywhere, done by everyone. And there's nothing we could really add to it at this point. So I think maybe, you know, smaller known crimes will definitely be what we look into.
Yeah. I mean, we started with this one. It is a bigger case, but, you know, it's to get our kind of bearings a bit.
With the paranormal tie to kick it off.
But this is also like a well-known that I haven't heard on every single podcast that I listen to.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so it was kind of perfect. It was something with a lot of information. Most of this, I do want to point out that the majority of this that we read today comes from crimelibrary.org. And it's basically like an online book of this dude. And it's really well written and it's very well documented, and that's why I used it.
Okay.
It's really good. So if you want to read the entirety of it, it's there if you'd like to go read it. You know, you could care less what we say. I get it, but
that's fine.
You can do
no
that.
hard feelings.
Yeah, you can do that. But we're going to end it here, and let's see if you can remember this. Where can they find us?
Well, they can find us on Instagram at @forthebooze_podcast and on Facebook at For the Booze.
That's right. You can also find us on YouTube, right here on YouTube at For the Booze. What's my other one? On not Twitter, on X.
Twitter. At
For the Booze. And what do I say? Anything else? I don't remember how to do this either. Just look us up online. It's For the Booze. We're everywhere.
If you'd like to send us any show suggestions
or stories,
personal stories that we would love to share on the show, you can send them to forthebooze@gmail.com.
Oh, there it is.
forthebooze12@gmail.com.
Yeah, that's probably more right.
Yeah, it is. That's better.
If you would like to join Patreon, you can find us over there on Patreon. And, you know, we kind of failed our Patreon members. I'm not going to lie.
We did.
And we love you guys. The ones that stuck around. I said it in our other, our Patreon episode. Like, I really appreciate you giving me the time that I needed to get through this time that I had. But our Patreon, they make it possible.
They do.
So
you guys are so great, and we are so grateful to have you. And thank you for your understanding. And you will be getting your Behind the Booze already. You will have already had it. Maybe another one. Yeah. Maybe an extra. I don't know.
Yeah, they've already had it.
Love you guys.
So thank you guys. And I think that's it.
I think
is that everything?
I think so.
I think we did it. All right, go ahead and kick us out of here.
Well, thank you everybody so much for listening, and we will see you in the next one.
Bye. Don't go in the woods by yourself.
We're back.
Yeah.